But, I think it's such an important conversation. Specifically, I know you're a mom, so kids, I'm a mom. And for me, I just wanted my kids to feel like if there was something they're struggling with, that they feel like they have an open, soft place to talk about it.
Yeah. And it's such a layered thing. Like as a mom, if you're struggling with mental health, you feel fear in sharing that like what's going to happen, what are people going to perceive me as a parent? And then if your kids are struggling with mental health, as one of mine does, then it's the perception of I haven't done enough as a mother to do something for them, right? We forget like if my kid suddenly got the flu or had a chronic health condition, I would not be layered with guilt like I somehow caused it, like I feel with mental health issues. It's very layered.
You bring out such a huge point that moms take that guilt. I too have a child that struggles with mental health issues, and I never divulge too much because it's for
Mhm.
privacy reasons, but you blame yourself
You do.
constantly, always,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I'm like, well, I literally am on the treadmill this morning going, when is that going to go away? Is it ever going to go away? I want to stop feeling guilty.
I guilty and also worried. Like I do you remember when you're like first expectant and you're like, if I just make it, I made a post about that once. If I just make it to 12 weeks, I'll feel better. And then it's like, if I just make it to halfway, I'll feel great. And if I just make it to birth and like everything's fine, that'll be amazing. And then if I just make it to 1 year and she's 1 year and thriving, I'll be great. And then it's like, if I could just make it to kindergarten without like an accident, and then it's if they just make it through elementary school and then secondary school, and then they go off to be independent. It's like if I can get them to like 21 and like going through university, you keep thinking that it's going to end up somewhere where you're like going to stop the worry and stop the blame and stop the guilt and like that constant pressure we put on ourselves. It's a long game thing. And I think every time we set these like expectations of like, this is the goalpost is always going to move. So we do need to kind of learn how to manage how it all feels to kind of be dealing with being a parent, but also being a person.
Yeah, and they watch us, and I feel like
Yeah.
I'm doing them a disservice if I'm not showing them how to process, right?
Mm,
Even all the worry. Like I'm not
yeah.
doing yeah, I don't know. It's a lot being I would run this, the business stuff any day. But the
Yeah.
mom part is just so much harder and so much more complex. And let's face it, the what it is so much more important
Mhm.
than my business, of course. And I know you understand that. So in January, we know it's the month this January 17th, people call Blue Monday. And then the final week of the year, on the 26th, which is Bell Let's Talk Day. So what we wanted to do as a team is literally start sharing, not only the practical side, but just I think the real side of struggling with mental health.
Mm.
I'm open, recovered alcoholic, obviously tons of mental health concerns for myself throughout the years, and what I've done to cope and manage. But you have such an important position in the sense that, so many people are in your audience, and I know so many young Indigenous folks that would love to have the kind of platform that you do to be influencers. And it is, I'm sure, super fun and you love everything you're doing, but I'm sure there's a really hard, scary side to it. And when you decide to put yourself out there, along the way, like what happened? What was there a day when you're like, why did I do this? Have you ever thought that way? Because there's a lot of heat and hate that comes with this territory. And
Yeah.
so I would just love you to share, I think, that side of it, because
Mhm.
I think it's a great job for so many people, but then I think that it's good to know the whole picture.
Yeah, I think it's a great job. And I think it is so full of opportunity and it's so full of room to be yourself and to grow upon what you do as an individual best. And I started 13 years ago when I was a stay at home mom. I was stay at home mom for a decade. So I got bored real fast and I got lonely really fast. And I just remember finding blogs for the first time and feeling like it was the only connection to another world that I had that was outside of my house and what two toddlers were doing every single day. So I felt such a connection into reading about these other people's lives and their experiences and how they were decorating and what they were making for dinner. And I just at some point just really wanted to be able to talk back. I wanted to be in the conversation too. I wanted to pacify that loneliness a little bit more. And I wanted to be a part of something. So I didn't have any means to start a blog. So I Googled how to start a blog and I Googled how to code it. And I sat there in my living room for months and built this atrocious blog. And I made the crappiest content and I loved it with all my heart. I loved it. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I'm going to get recognized in the grocery store the day I pressed publish, because I was like, oh, this is it. The world is mine, right? And very, very ambitious 23-year-old. And that came with young motherhood, right? I didn't go to university. I got married very young. So my whole life was these kids. And this blog was like this tiny little piece that I got to own on the internet. And that was very exciting back then. And as time went on and I kept being a part of it, we saw, Instagram come about, Facebook came about, but that was like a family thing. And then Instagram came about, and that was like, it cracked your whole world open because it blended your person with your brand and you all kind of came together. And I got to follow these blogs that I loved and these people that I'd been following their storylines that lived in totally different parts of the world, now on this instantaneous type of place. But something else happened where we shifted away from just like what we were making for dinner and what our houses looked like. It was all about what we looked like. And I went through a huge, like, I have to now be a person that is worthy to be looked at. And for anybody who knows my story, was losing weight. I thought that was going to be my entry point into that society. And it was. That's the sad part about it, is I lost a lot of weight and I was widely accepted and I got a lot of praise and attention. And my tiny little baby Instagram account suddenly had like 60,000 followers, which was incredible. I was so excited. And I remember I was like working at my job and some of my coworkers found my Instagram page and they were just losing their minds over the fact that I had this following. And it was just like, you're just so overstimulated. I've been working a decade towards even just having something recognized to now having this platform that was taking off. And unfortunately, all of that also was my life crumbling at the same time. I was struggling with disordered eating. I had numerous amount of health issues that were popping up that I didn't know was because of the disordered eating. I was also going through a divorce, and all anybody would say to me is like, you look so great. And I wasn't great. I was worse in how I felt about what I looked. I was terrified to leave my house. I was editing every part of my pictures and I've left them all up. So it's really fascinating to go back. And I would always make my nose smaller and my eyes bigger and my waist tucked and my boobs bigger. It was a constant scrutiny about myself. And social media, while being this place that I did it really, I had to kind of step back and reevaluate who I was bringing, because my whole core reason that I wanted to be on social media and have a platform was so that I was a part of something. And I don't know why so many of us fall into that. I have to be this in order to be a part of that. So I ended up really doing a lot of healing and figuring out who I was. And I'm still figuring that out, but just journaling that out loud. It was a recommendation of my therapist to start journaling and listening to my thoughts, forming my own opinions for the first time in my life. And those became my captions. And I had no idea that so many other people were feeling a lot of the things that I was feeling and struggling with the same things that I was struggling with. And we would laugh and cry all at the same time. But ultimately, as I sit here today with this job and this incredible platform, and also incredible responsibility, it's so fascinating how much there is a blurred line between person and brand, right? There's the Birds Papaya, and then there's Sarah Nicole Landry, and there is no difference between us. And yet there is, in any business, as you know, you have to sit down and you have to measure things. You have to look at your insights. You have to look at, how things are going. You need to look at your business wellness, right? And to then have that be a part of you, the person, as well as you, the brand, there isn't a lot of resources out there to support that. I'm sure for you as well, like having a brand that you're so tightly knitted to, if something were to do poorly or have bad, be received ill or, you know, have pushback to something, there is that part of you that takes that really personally. What I found with having a platform is the things that you receive feedback on are usually you. So it is it's a lot of deep work in listening to criticism and being able to have the tools to manage the right types of criticism and the wrong types of criticism, and how you choose to show up continually. Because I'll be honest, a lot of the criticism has made me who I am today because I was meant to be critiqued.
Mm. Wow. That is
That was a
such an
lot. Sorry.
no, but that's just, I just had like this epic realization, like I myself, and I'm sure many of us out here have to realize that maybe those are the things that we do need to work on and adjust so that they
Yeah.
aren't so painful. Oh,
Mhm.
wow, that was good. I certainly, I felt that. And yeah, that it's for young people. This is
Mm.
where I struggle, and I think about the heat that I've taken, and I'm an adult. I'm a 45-year-old woman, and I'm like sometimes gutted by the things people say and do, whether it's
Yeah.
even in the comments or in the DMs.
Mhm.
My concern is for this next generation of young people, and how are they to handle that? Like, do you have suggestions if they want to, if this is the path they're going to take, like how do they handle that?
There are so many tools that you can pull from, and I think I think it's such an important part of life is being able to manage criticism and manage. There's two different types of things. There's the calling in, and the calling out, and I really had to learn the differences between them. Somebody who's trolling and somebody who actually cares to better you. I had somebody who blasted me widely on social media. For something that I was probably just not being sensitive enough towards. I talk a lot in the postpartum space. I talk a lot about, body healing because of my disordered eating, but I was taking up a little bit too much space in a movement that had a lot of marginalized bodies. And I wasn't taking enough time to highlight those who had lost and been stripped of their human rights, that I was becoming the face of a movement that wasn't meant for me. And when those conversations came up, I was so uncomfortable. Like I'm talking like back in 2020, I think I threw up 3 times that day. It was so uncomfortable to see yourself be put up in somebody else's post and then have all of this stuff be said about you and everyone in conversation right in front of your face about you. That's a very tender spot to be, especially when you struggle with people pleasing and anxiety. But I will say this, everyone is looking for spaces to be heard. And this person had no intention to, um, she wasn't trolling. She was bringing up valid points. And we have such a beautiful friendship now. But more than
Wow.
that, I learned so much from that experience. And sometimes she'll say to me, I'm so sorry for the way we met. And I'm like, I'm not, because I'm a better person because of that. But that doesn't mean it was easy. It took a lot of, people will always say like your skin just gets thicker. And I don't think that's it. I think we learn to refine what is valuable to spend time with and what's what I call a blossom and blossom situation. Somebody who has no intention to change any part of your character or want to say anything that they actually think would be entrusting you to do better. It is a complete tear down and a knockdown, and you have to be able to start differentiating yourself. I've got 3 kids who are on social media. I know I cannot bubble wrap these children, even though it's going to be real hard for me when I see comments come in, and I'm going to want to be that person that's like, no, you're not saying this. It's a lot of learning people skills. It's new people skills. These are not people skills that we had 20 years ago. They're very new people skills. And there's also the reality that there's a lot of people who struggle and use trolling on social media as a dopamine hit, as a way to make themselves feel better. And so it's recognizing what is actually valuable to spend your time on, what you really need to be listening to, and learning along the way of what it's like to quiet yourself in those moments. I listened to a podcast once with JVN. He was speaking to a brain psychologist, and it talked about saying how much like he deals with criticism on his platform and how much it hurts and it's such a struggle, and how you can have 99 positive things said to you and that one negative one is the one that you take home. And the brain psychologist said something, I wish I knew her name because I talk about her all the time, but she said that when somebody leaves a negative comment or like a trolling comment, one that's like intended to tear you down, that brain trauma actually occurs to you when you receive that. But this is the kicker. When you respond in a way that is like back, that's not maybe not kind, or like it doesn't need to be like truly, but even just engaging back in that discussion causes brain trauma to you both. So for me, that learning that made me say, like, the best way for me to love this person who is coming in and saying criticism is to not speak back. It is to not engage in this conversation, and is to protect myself and remove myself and my brain from it as well. And I talk about those things openly with my kids. They have to watch when, mom has something said to her and you watch the blood drain out of my entire body. They've seen it. And I think they're very aware of how it can happen. And I'm going to have to watch them go through it as well. And I can only hope that we just create enough discussion around how that feels and that it's real and true. There's a lot of shame that comes with somebody saying something negative, that a lot of people feel like it's only them. Every creator I know, when they get it, they think they're the only one. And it's just not true. There's so many people struggling with it. And there's a lot of people struggling on the internet. And it's going to create this chaos that happens where it really hurts people.
Wow, you are such a gem of a human being, because the realizations that you have made, it just sounds like I love transformation of any kind, and I feel like the fact that we as human beings, that we get to transform every single day, it
Mhm.
just sounds like you're just have matured so much over, you've used this as a process to make yourself better. Like
Yeah.
that's really awesome. And I
Yeah.
wish more of us would jump on that, like figuring out how to make ourselves better every day. Like that is so fantastic.
Yeah,
And
I've had
it's
to kind of rethink it as like there's no such thing as failure. It's just varying degrees of success. So when you suck at something, that's just a lower degree of success. But if you actually use it to do better, then it's part of your success story. It has to be. So if there's no such thing as failure in that regard, or if failure is only a tool that helps you get better, then bring it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be hard as heck. But I think especially if I look back at every change in my life, and especially on my platform, even making the decision to no longer be a weight loss account, that caused my account to fail for a year. I would have never thought. I mean, I had
mm,
to lose 60,000 followers, but then I gained 2 million. And that had to happen because I had to write what was going wrong. And that's a really hard thing to do when you have no idea what's coming.
wow, that's really powerful, and I think important for all the creators or anyone who wants to be an influencer at the
Mhm.
moment to understand, is that sometimes you do take those small steps backwards, but look what you gained when you
Yeah.
became authentically who you're supposed to be in this place,
And a
right?
lot of times we're just trying to figure out what that is. And sometimes that comes with, I love the saying, like, be your own best hypocrite. Like, be okay with being wrong with what you said 3 years ago. There's a lot of shame tied up in like, when you learn to do better, you have to somehow like erase who you used to be. And
Mhm.
I very much am like, no, go ahead and read those posts. You can go and like, this is very embarrassing. It's very cringeworthy, but look who I am now today, because that is who I thought I was. That's who I thought I was going to be. And I got to change my mind. And what a beautiful thing that is.
And we need more of that. Like, let people change, people
Mhm.
change. I am really an advocate against that idea that we don't change, that we're stuck and bound by those past mistakes.
Yes.
Especially as a recovered addict, because there's so many things in my past that, oh my goodness, I used to think if people knew. But
Mhm.
now if I'm the one telling those stories, please,
Yes.
but I knew I did horrible things and that shouldn't have happened, but that's not the person I wanted to be or should have been. It was someone struggling and in a lot of pain, and
Yes.
giving people grace for their past mistakes, and being the friend who sits, or the fellow human. It doesn't even have to be a friend, being the fellow human that is sort of there to walk alongside of people on that path of life, right? Even through
Yeah.
the struggle. is so important. Well, I want to thank you so much. I know that you are a super, super busy gal with lots to do. I would just have one last question, and I know that this gets asked a lot, and it's so hard to pinpoint, but for your younger self,
Mhm.
is like, what is that one key thing that you're like, or any advice someone has given you that you were like, yes, I took that advice, it really worked, or something that you're like, I wish I knew this when I was younger. So you get to pick which one.
Anytime somebody brings up a younger self, I always get emotional. So I'm sorry. Um, our younger self is exactly who we are meant to be, and we quiet them. I think that's what it is when we're little and when we're small, who we believed ourselves to be follows with a great quieting of that, because so many other opinions and roadblocks. I thought when I was 6 years old that I was going to be on a stage and I was going to be doing all this stuff, and I remember how quieted I got over the years. And sometimes when I think back, and like, this is a stage that didn't exist back then. So I'm entirely doing what I had always dreamed of doing. And it was very much like not getting out of my own way, but getting out of the way of other people's ideas for me, and others' path for me, and remembering who I was. And because I think a lot of times we think it's like finding yourself. And I think it's about coming home. I think we all have who we are. And I think it's coming home to that person, just trusting that a little bit more, even if it doesn't always make sense in the time. Like when I think about when I started talking about the things I talked about, nobody was. So I was, my hands would be shaking and I'd put the phone down and walk away for an hour and go have a cold shower because it was so hard to manage what I just said out loud. You talked about how having control of like sharing your own story. I used to always say my favorite thing was, once a secret is told, it loses its power. And I felt like I was carrying so many secrets, and having control of that and being able to share your story and be who you are, not unapologetically, because sometimes we do mess up, but ultimately, I wish if I could just go back, I would just tell her, listen, listen, listen to yourself before you listen to everybody else, because you have a lot of really good ideas. You have a lot of amazing things to say, and you're just letting everybody else take the microphone. So have a moment, listen to other people, but also listen to yourself, because that's the voice that we really need to be building upon and bettering ourselves with.
Mm, that is so great. The guru of powerful social media conversations, Sarah Nicole Landry, thank you so much for talking to me and sharing this with our audience. I know so many Indigenous youth out there that this is like their dream role, and your honesty is going to be so helpful. And I know I'm going to go back and listen because there's like incredible key points and takeaways that we want to highlight for sure. So thank you so much.
And you tell anybody listening, they can always slide into my DMs. I spend 4 hours a day in my DMs. I try and get to as many as possible because I have such a heart for this community and a heart for people who desire to be a part of it. So I really think it's our game changer, and I think it's a really exciting time. And so even if we talk about the things that kind of suck about it, don't let that freak you out. It just make it that it empowers you to do your best work.
You are such a special person. Thank you.